Welcome to another edition of the Honor Level Talk Show. I'm your host, Ankhobia. Remember, we promised you the second part of remember the first part we did was how do black men view black women in today's society in Britain? Well, we're bringing you how do black women view black men in today's society. Yes, how do black women view black men in today's society? A lot of sisters speaking, so you've got to be very open-minded about what you're going to hear. We're not here to argue or to cause contention and put each other down. It's all about learning from each other. All right? So there you go. You've been told. Of course, you may agree or you may disagree with what they actually have to say. We're going to play a series of interviews and then we're going to go into some discussion with my guest in the studio. So I don't want to do too much talking today. All right, so enjoy the interviews.
I'm a cultural sister.
How do you view black men in Britain?
Not very highly. I think that men in the Caribbean seem to have more positive thoughts and views and outlook on life and on family life in general.
Why?
I'm not sure why that is. I think obviously the prospects of having to work harder for things in the Caribbean and to strive to achieve your goals, I think things come much more easily here, and the black men here are after, for me, the easier way of life. And so anything that comes to them easy, anything that they've got to work at, just requires too much energy.
Do you feel that black men in this country appreciate black women, love them, respect them, stand by them, support them, encourage them?
Oh boy, what a deep question. I just don't see it. I really have to tell you, I stand back and I look and I just don't see it. And as a black woman, it's very sad. It's hard to accept. It hurts even to talk about it because it means that no matter what I achieve or no matter what I become, the very ethos of who I would like to be with, that's just never going to happen for me unless I'm prepared to settle, which, as you can see in this generation or this day and age, with women becoming more strong-minded and strong-willed and working their way up the corporate ladder, they're just not going to settle. And I have to say I'm one of these women that are just not prepared to settle. I find that I get more respect from the Caribbean males, when I travel, that they respect me, they talk to me with respect, talk to me on a level of conversation where you can hold an intelligent conversation. The majority of black men that I get a conversation from, that's not where it's going. It's not an intelligent conversation, which really saddens me. The black British men could learn something from the Caribbean men in terms of the approach, because I think what you find in the Caribbean man is that he wants a black woman. And so, therefore, his approach to her is different.
But then do you see black men as community builders, as protectors and guards of their communities?
You look at the other communities around us, the Somalians, the Asians, you can see the male dominance. Just as you walk down the very street, you'll see the males are very much at the forefront. And it's not like it's the men are at the front and the women are walking behind. It's just like a lion protecting their cubs. They're very much the pride of the party, and they're protecting what is theirs, and they're making sure that they're providing always for them. I would like to really ask, a black man what his values are. That's where it starts. Have they got any values? Who knows? It's very hard, because you'd like to say that if they had values, you would see them as community-based. If you look at the African Caribbean community in this country, it is every man for himself. There isn't a community. Everybody is looking for themselves.
You're out on the street sometimes and you hear the brothers refer to themselves as kings and lions and warriors and emperors. Do those terms have any meaning, any substance to them?
I think it only has substance in their mind. I think if they were to go to the Oxford Dictionary and look up what those words meant, they'd be quite surprised. So those are really just words, really. I don't think they have any meaning.
As a black woman who is wearing a weave, how would you respond to a brother telling you that you're wearing the weave on your head is proof that black women have lost their cultural identity?
I would respond in saying the same as it is proof that a black man dating a white woman is proof of him losing his identity. But my hair really doesn't define me, so I really don't have to justify it.
My name is Jenny Hall. I do have some views on black men. In the era when I grew up in the 70s, it's a lot different from the black men of today. The black men of today, they don't seem to want to, own up to their responsibilities, in particular their children, and being proper fathers to their children. They seem to like to put it on the women. Black women, I think black women have become more stronger because they've had to. I can't rely on the black men of today. I mean, I've got a son, he's only 8, and I'm trying to get him into that way of thinking of, being part of society. Stop blaming people that you didn't get this or whatever, you got to work hard, because that's what our parents did, our fathers did, this mentality of that society owes you something, I said, I don't agree with this, and I'm trying to raise my son to understand that he's got to work for everything.
Are we really strong, or are we just struggling getting on with it?
I think some black women are struggling. I see myself as strong and having to be strong, not because I didn't have, my husband, we've been together for 20 odd years, so I don't have that experience of having to struggle to bring up my kids on my own. A man was never there. I don't have that experience, so I guess I've been lucky in that sense. But I do know some women that have, they've come through, they're in their 40s as well, and the men wasn't there for them, but they've become strong.
Do you think black men are a productive group in this society?
Some of them are, some of them aren't. It depends. No, I wouldn't say the majority. Wherever I go, I don't say, it's typical black men. No, it isn't, because, like I say, at church, there's a lot of black men in church, and there's more black men seem to be coming to church because they're realizing that there's nothing out there for them.
Do you think, as black women, that we have the wrong attitude towards black men? We're very harsh and we kind of speak bitter of them.
Some black women can, obviously, but I think those are black women that's had bad experiences with men. But on the whole, we try and encourage, even though some of them just want to stay in that laid-back state and not do nothing for themselves. But still, I don't think black women should really slander them or whatever. Should always encourage, because it can only get better.
What would you like to say to black men out there?
Just support black women more. Just do your best and be positive. You do count in society. Don't think that because you might be from a minority group that you don't count. You do count, and it's up to you. It's how you feel inside. If you feel you count, then you're going to make an effort to better yourself. But if you just want to accept that, this is society, has labelled me with this, I'm going to accept it, then that's when you're going to fail. But if you don't accept it, and just be positive and do whatever you can, especially if you've got kids, hold your head up. You are part of this society, no matter what anybody says.
Are they family builders? Are they afraid to commit, do you think, coming from the church? Or are they willing to commit? Are they willing to come together and join with a woman and have a family and help build up the community?
I think they are, yes. They want to commit, because I don't believe that anybody wants to be on their own.
But do they want to commit to black women?
They want to commit to black women, but I think some of them are happy just to let the woman take the main role, even though the man is supposed to be the head of the house. A lot of men, they don't want to pick up that role. They'd rather let the women do it or look after the kids. And yes, they're there for support or whatever's needed, but they're happy to let the woman just get on with it, whereas it shouldn't be so. They should be equal, and just kids should see them as equal parents. And I think all men, whether they're in the church or not, they should adopt that role, that they're the head of the house, not in an arrogant and bossy way or anything like that. As a family unit, it's not a power thing. It's about taking responsibility, being the man.
The On a Level talk show with Ankhobia.
Yeah, I'm Phil, and
I'm Jennifer.
I'm Elaine.
Your general view on black men?
I just think they're stubborn, and some of them can be quite selfish and all for themselves. They don't think about you.
At the end of the day, it's a woman that's let some of the men behave like that because we break them bad. We let them lay down in bed, don't go to work, you know what I mean, wearing the trousers down the ankle and things like that. And we encourage it. So why would they change if I'm going to, you know, encourage him and whatever? So if he take up you and you want him to change, why should he change for you and he can be all right with me? So that at the end of the day, that's how it is. You know what I mean? So
you think black women have to accept more responsibility?
And they're the ones that let some of the men behave like that because they learn to accept too much failures and accept anything that the men do, and they don't talk about it. They just say, okay, yeah, I'll do this because I want to keep him, and you know what I mean. I don't say, well, I want to go for better. Just okay, only that person can get, and it's not right because you can get better. You can, you know, do better than that what they're doing, but they're just too lenient.
Do you think black men in Britain are productive as a group? Are they progressive?
No. It's sad to say because I'm a black person, but no.
Are black men progressive?
In having children.
Or to have more than one woman. I mean, we have Tom, Dick, Harry on all over the place, or ramping down too much, and you see AIDS is spreading now at the moment, so they need to calm down.
But I want to know why they feel that they have to look all the women out the street when they've got the perfect woman in the house. You understand what I'm saying? If you've got the perfect woman in the house, there's no need for you to go outside and look it. That's what I just want to know what the answer is to that.
The house put up with too much, and sometimes the men want a break from it all, and they can get somebody outside who say, okay, come and clean my house, and they go and do it, and in the house they don't do nothing because the wife is too, you know what I mean, relaxed with his behaviour. So why should he change at home when he can go outside and change for somebody else because the wife don't complain about his behaviour? So why should he anyway? So that's how I see it.
Do you think they're good role models?
In some aspect, you have like maybe 100% live in Britain or Birmingham, but you have like 20% will be a role model, but the other, just no.
I'll comment on that one.
What do you think black men in this society need to begin to understand about black women?
Need to know them women first.
But know what?
Need to know the women and know themselves.
They need to know about themselves first, not really women. And then when they know about themselves and start respecting themselves, then they'll learn to respect women on a whole.
Will men ever respect women? Will they ever respect women?
Start from inside, Jennifer. A woman can't really change a man. You can change in some ways, but you can't really change him.
A woman can change a way,
but not all aspect. In some ways, because the man needs to change from inside.
You say a man needs to know himself. What does that take? I mean, it sounds like rhetoric.
He needs to know himself, because some people don't really, they're black but they don't really know the identity. They just copy people, do whatever they see on the street, do whatever other people do and say, okay, I'll do that, but they don't really know themselves.
Could the problem be with us? Are we too harsh? Are we too aggressive? Are we too negative?
We want too much.
You're too short-tempered, because I am sometimes. I'm too short-tempered. You know, I get easily agitated by simple things where I can overlook it. You know what I mean? So maybe sometimes that will put a man off as well. But if you can go outside and get someone else and say, okay, and the person is not so aggressive, they're going to go for that person. You know what I mean? Leave me on my own.
I agree with that. I agree with some of what she's saying there.
So how do you think that affects then the black man?
Because sometimes he'll say it does my head in. You know, he'll say my behaviour does his head in, and if you can go outside and get somebody that can do, you know what I mean, not does his head in and just be calmer than me and not be miserable, he'll go for it.
Yeah, because I've spoken to a couple of men on the issues of women and the relationships and stuff like that, and I always say to them, why do men find it, you know, to go and look for another woman? They said it's not every day they want to get up and eat toast. I said, but we eat toast every day and we still stand by it, so why can't you? You know what I mean? And they said, well, it's a black man thing at the end of the day. And I said, well, women need to start doing this now and see how you feel. That's what I find anyway, that men like a woman that can say yes some of the times, you know what I mean? And it's not all black women are going to say yes. So that's probably why they go to different colours and stuff like that, because probably they find it easier with them.
How would you compare black British men to Jamaican men and African men?
Black British men are much tighter in the pocket. You have to really ask, really. With a Jamaican man, you don't have to ask. They just take up the responsibility of, okay, I'm with a woman, I'm supposed to take responsibility for the gas bill, the light bill and whatever. So they take on the responsibility. Some Englishmen, not all of them, they want you to ask, and if you ask, they're going to ask you if you're not working. So where's your money? You know what I mean? But that's how it is.
Get the money from or something like that, you know, something trivial. Men on a whole can be damn selfish, but then again, I suppose women can be selfish as well.
What would you like to say as a final message to black men out there?
Fix up fix up yourself, and try and get some respect for yourself as well as other people, and other women will respect you back.
Yeah, go and get a job, even if it's cleaning toilets, sweeping the streets. Do something with your life. Stop wearing your trousers down your bottom. Stop pulling up your trousers. Be strong.
Low life man without a career or job. They want somebody that's going to help them, not put them down.
And don't let people put you down, because people put them down, it's like they're just being worthless and say, oh, I can't do that, I can't do that, and just don't get up and try to do something for themselves.
My name's Joan. My views on black men, they're not all bad. There are some good men out there, but where the hell are they? I'm 48. My age group, they're either standing outside the bookie, standing outside the pub. They've worked hard at school, they've got their qualifications, they're professional men, but they've moved on to whiter pastures. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. They're not with the black women anymore. They've moved on. The black women who have risen and accelerated and progressed, they're doing it on their own, because they've got no black man to share it with. I want a black man to share it with. I want a black man who's made it to share it with me. Share it together, work together, build our community together, give our children something to look at, to aspire to make our community strong. We've got nothing.
Do you feel that black men have betrayed us?
I feel betrayed. As a second generation woman, on my own, thinking, where is my man? Where is the man that I was working so hard to build my family and my foundations with? Where is he? I feel betrayed. I feel a lot of black women are betrayed, because a lot of us have supported our men to get where they want to go, and when they've got it, they move on.
And do you think the black woman has contributed to them moving on?
If a black woman has contributed to their moving on, it's because the black woman has refused to lay down and be kicked. She's risen up and she said no more. And I think as a black woman, when you start to get yourself educated, when you start to find motivation, when you start to progress, you become a threat to your black man. And it shouldn't be like that. You should be working together, you should be rising together. It just isn't working.
So, what are your views on younger black men today then?
I feel that our young people today, our young black men today, they're lost. They're like swimming in the dark with their hands tied behind their backs. They've got nobody to guide them, to lead them. They've got nowhere to go. Nobody to aspire to.
Nobody as in male role models?
Good male role models. I'm not saying there aren't some good role models. Life models. There are very few of them out there, and they're very hard to find, because if you look at it in our black community, you're looking for somebody for your children to aspire to. We've got some good black lawyers, we've got some good black teachers, but again, these men, they've moved on. So your black children, your black boys are seeing that, their father's generation have probably done something with themselves, and they're split from their mother, and they're thinking, well, what was the point? What's the point of family? Why should we bother?
What do you think some of the strategies are that we're going to have to use in order to fix up, as you put it?
First of all, I think our black men have got to start realising that education is the key. At the same time, we as black women have got to start supporting our black men. All right, they're full of ish some of the time, but unless we do it, we're not going to get them back. We're not going to win them back. They're not going anywhere. It is up to us as black women to bring them back in and say, look, it's gone bad, but we can fix it. This is what we want from you as black women. What do you want from us? Doesn't mean that we're going to start lying down on the floor for you to kick us. Doesn't mean that we're going to sit in the corner and shut up because you said don't talk. We've got to work together to make it work, to build our community.
What would you like to say to black men who are going to be listening to this interview? What would you like to say to them out there?
Black men, come back and get to know your black sister. Your black sister wants to get to know you. Let's work at it. Let's find the common ground. Let's build our community let's build our race because we're just throwing it all down the drain. Go back and learn about yourself. Be proud in yourself. Don't say, oh, I'm going to do it and it's going to be taken away from me. Go out there and say, I'm going to do it again, and this time I'm going to make sure you don't take it away from me. You understand? Black men nowadays, they do something, they fail, they give up. No, if you do it and you fail, do it again another way. And make sure that you have your education so they can't take it away from you. Black women have got to take the lead and get the strength from somewhere to just get our black men back on track. But I think it's probably too late for some of the older generation now, like 40s, 50s, but it's not too late for the young people. There's hope. There's got to be hope. There's got to be an answer.
The On the Level Talk Show.
All right, you're in tune to the On the Level Talk Show. We're playing a series of interviews that was taken a few weeks ago, where the On the Level team went out onto the streets and spoke to black women throughout Birmingham, and we asked them what were their views on black men in Britain today. We're going to play the last two interviews, and then we're going to get down to some serious discussion. We hope you're enjoying the show.
My name's Sandra, and my views in terms of black men, or I like to see as African men, the men aren't being men. They're not being fathers, some of them aren't. And sometimes it's because they don't know how to. And sometimes also it's a fear, whether it's peer pressure. So if I go into the black youth males, they haven't really got the role models. I mean, I had a young man come up to me one day and I said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I've got some friends who are positive and aspiring and they could be a role model for you. And he says, well, he's never had anybody. He's never had anyone around. This youth was actually crying out, and it was really saddened to know that about a year later, he ended up locked up. And that is exactly where he is right now. And that was a 14, 15-year-old young man, black male, crying out for help. So in terms of the men have a lot to do, or a lot to answer for. They need to start checking themselves and working on themselves.
In what areas?
In all facets. They themselves are not necessarily understanding themselves, and if they had a greater understanding themselves and the strength and the power that was within them, then they'd be able to transfer that, and they would possibly respect the African family and traditional value systems even more. A lot of the men have got caught up with the commercialism. They've got caught up, I won't say all of them, in drugs and crime, because of, possibly jobs are really difficult to get, so therefore they've had to resort to some other ways of being able to sustain themselves. But in doing so, what they're actually doing, they're teaching the young ones that this is the way it's supposed to be, so then things become generational. Spiritually also, they also need to start dealing with themselves and working on themselves and connecting, with the Creator.
Do you think black men are afraid of spirituality, are afraid of having a relationship with the source, with the Creator?
I feel that some men do. We have been conditioned not to maybe tap in on your sixth sense. It's the connection, more than anything else, for them to be connected with their ancestry and being able to listen to those voices and basically follow the guidance and trust in it. Now, because dealing with your spirituality, you're actually going into the unknown, that can be fearful for some people. It's also tapping onto that creativity and allowing themselves and surrendering themselves.
For you then, what do you think is the biggest problem facing black men in this society? Or what is the biggest fear, perhaps, that they need to conquer?
They need to start loving themselves and valuing themselves, particularly the men who have got a lot of children and are not necessarily minding them. They have to also look and say, well, if they have their children, say for example their daughters ended up in a relationship with someone like themselves, would they like it? Would they really like their daughter or their child being treated the way how they are necessarily treating those children's mothers? They need to really check themselves and start addressing some of those issues.
Do they have vision?
Some men do, and they're a rarity. A lot of men, I don't like to generalize as much. I mean, they're into the materialism, they want the house, they want the car, and in a sense wanting the things that the media will display, or the European people will say, well, get your qualifications, do this, do that, and then you'll be able to have this. And this is just within the system, so therefore they're becoming a slave to the system. So it's a matter of re-enslaving themselves, and because they're not using their creativity and becoming visionaries, because that is one gift that we as African people have, because they're not actually opening themselves up to the Creator to be able to see the things, then they will always be subjected to another form of enslavement within the system. What we need to be able to do is to embrace the strength and the power of the youth, because these young men, again, are crying out. They're needing that sense of direction. They're very grounded, they're very streetwise, which they can surprise a lot of us in terms of, you sit down and have a conversation with them and your mind will be blown with the things what they actually come out with. So it's also important that we can connect with them where they're at, and also be able to share the knowledge that we have and pass it on to them, because a lot of them, they don't want to make the mistakes that some of us have already made, and they're looking for a way out. And if more men actually embrace the spirituality and embrace, for me, African spirituality, then bit by bit we'll have our soldiers and we'll have our warriors, and we will have men who are going to be worthy to be with our daughters.
You've travelled to many, many countries. Is the picture for black men, for example, in Africa, in the Americas, in the Caribbean, and even countries in Europe, is the picture much different than what we're actually getting in Britain?
I can only talk from my personal experiences, but in America, I won't say all, but you find a lot of the young people, they're married by the time they're in their 20s, so therefore they're able to have that lasting relationship, or have a relationship that they can actually build on. And again, I find that the American men, they tend to respect and value myself a lot more than the men who are actually here. I've been to Jamaica, and again, it's as if it's a whole different cultural value system. And when, say, some Jamaican men come over here and they see how the men are behaving with the women and the single parents, they're laughing.
Do black men in this society, do they love the black woman, or are they afraid and fearful of the black woman?
They say they love the black woman, but because they are not sure, dare I say, how to love themselves, it is very hard for them to truly love a black woman the way in which they need to be loved. You know, and love means not just in the bedroom, but there's different ways to show a woman love, if you understand what I mean. And a lot of the men, they find it difficult. Maybe that breakdown is another generational thing, but that's something that they also need to address. You know, so them loving themselves, truly loving themselves, and not being afraid to also love somebody else.
Are we making excuses for black men?
I'm not making excuses for black men. Black men basically need to get off their behinds and start believing in themselves. If they are going to be the head of the household, then they have to be men. And if a woman finds the right man, she will humble herself if need be, if the man is strong enough. So therefore the men, like the youth them would say, they need to fix up.
What would you like to say as a final message to all black men in Britain?
Well, for some of you who need to fix up. For a lot of you who have not actually connected with your spiritual selves, try and find it, and try and find that connection, and try and learn to love and value yourselves, and in doing so you'll be able to truly love your woman, your children and your family.
These Jamaican man in Britain, when they first come here and first they get married, stuff like that, they don't intend to go out to work. If they have a next child with a next outside woman, they don't intend that child to get support. They expect the government to mind that child. And when they're back home in Jamaica, you have to work and support your child. When you back home in the Caribbean, as a Jamaican woman, that man have to go out and provide for his family. Now in England, when you're in England, you see a different thing. These men wait on these British women to go out and mind them. No way. When we back home, a totally different thing. Some of them come here and they here from all 10, 15 years and everything. They must tell their wife do this, their wife do that. No way. When we in the Caribbean have our man, him have to go out and provide for his family. If that man have a next kids away from his wife, him have to support that kid. And you as a British woman, most of we yardy man come here, send for our yardy woman and have another wife a house, and yet them have we Jamaican woman where they have with our 4 kids same way and everything. And then the end of the day, some of uno we're in the house with no husband. And when like we call up and say, boy, your husband this, you don't have a human feelings and everything, and say, no, this man need to be disciplined and this man need to be thrown out of my house as my wife and go and learn some principle. Right? You people keep him in there. And if him have a kids out there and that kid's out there hungry, you don't tell him say he must go out and feed that next kid. Right? These things are totally different experience from where we are back home. And these women, they must stop it. Them alone can't work and I support strong man. Some of the man, them again, they on the corner with them outside, I sell them come here and them get a life and people marry them, straighten them out. Have them again, for sell all drugs and stuff like those. They must go out and work and put back something in the system. Because sometimes even true certain people are British, the government mind their kids. They don't teach for them man to mind for them kids where them have. They just teach them every day for go up one corner, go in at the bookie and do this and do that. Those life are cruff life, what we call it back in the Caribbean, cruff. Those are low life people. Some of these men have our kids back home and from they come here, poor thing, their daughter, their son don't even hear nothing from them. Because every day they come, when they phone them, beg them something, them say nothing not going for them. Just through some of these women brought them bad, who is here, make them come in bed, lie down, sleep, don't get up to go to a job. I'm talking about the black British woman who brought these Jamaican man bad in England. So it's full time on a British woman wake up and make these cruff, go out, go learn to do something and provide for her owner.
Some of the Jamaican men I interviewed said that they wouldn't, and this is Jamaican men who've come here, recently into the country or been here for a few years, said that they wouldn't go out of a Jamaican woman. They found them too money orientated. All the Jamaican woman wanted was money, and you can't do nothing to help them anyway.
Well, that's a fact, because at the end of the day, we used to money back home. And money back home, it keep you a proper house, it keep you going clean, and it keep you looking decent. We Jamaican women love money. We love to keep clean place. We love to go out there and looking fresh and nice. So when you call a man and say, boy, you want this, you want that, the man I tell you, say him don't have it, because at the end of the day, you have some men. We don't have no money, because you woman give him money. We don't used to those life back home. So it's time. You black man out there who is here for on a 10, 15, 5, 6, 8 years who have a life, wake up. Wake up and do what you can do. And the country will be a better place, because some of you have kids out there want no member, or have mother out there want no member. And at the end of the day, if £20 go to Jamaica, it's enough money. Not all of you Jamaican man are bad, You have proper Jamaican man who know about his family and think of his family. I'm telling you, black sister, we're all black people. So all of we must wake up. Same like that. Many of we have Jamaican parents here and say we're British and things like that. So we're not supposed to make our Jamaican man fool we. Because you can't do that in our Caribbean. Right?
So what is it that you like about the Jamaican man when he's, in his proper state of mind? What is it that you like about him?
Well, my Jamaican man who always up there and always think positive. That's a good brother out there. And respect to you, my brother, who think about your family and who think about a woman forget look after. Enough respect and enough big up to you, my brother out there. Well, you black man out there, as what I'm saying, you just need to wake up and do what you got to do. Because if you don't wake up and do what you got to do, I'm going to get the beating someday, and I'll get a wicked beating from Jah. Yeah. Because loads of you have on the youths, them a cry for food. Right? And you need to wake up and let the youth them have their meal. Right? That's my message to you black boy out there.
Do you think black people in this country are productive?
Yeah, baby. You have some black people are very productive, very, very productive. You have very independent people in this place. You have some people you can't even believe are very independent in this place. Very, very productive, man, who have ambition and out there. Yeah, man. Yeah, and I thank God some of them don't mix with no yard, man. Because I have no ambition out there. I don't go where. All you have to do is just wake up, black woman. Just wake up, black woman. That's all me and a sister have to set on and just wake up on a spirit and just wake up on herself. And if a boy have to go away, I just run him away. And if a boy have to get put out, I just put him out. And say, step up time and move on time.
Thank you so much for your time.
Respect, my sister. Enough blessing, enough love. Keep up your good work and put out my voice out there.
My name's Josie.
Do you think as black women that we support the visions of black men, that we encourage them to go on and fulfill their individual destinies and their collective destiny together?
Because of the struggles that black women themselves have faced, and often due to black men in their lives, it has been quite easy for women to put down black men and to also cut down men's thoughts and men's visions. And I think some black women have been very, very aggressive towards their men, towards perhaps even their children, their sons, and also towards their husbands or their partners. But I think that that comes from, a whole psychological state that both men and women have been thrown into due to 500 years of slavery, due to oppression of just that natural force, that natural spirit of love. It's important for women, I think now, more than any time, to recognise the potential that the men have and to recognise that they are, as we are, they are sensitive beings, and that as we need, they also need support. But as I say, it's not all women and it's not all men. We are not isolated beings, that we cannot survive without each other. None of us is an island, one hand wash the other.
Given all that you've said, yes, the nature of the society and the kind of we're struggling as a community to kind of make ends meet and to kind of figure out what's going on. But yet, the sisters, as blazing the trail, they're getting on with things. They just seem to be just getting on with things and doing things for not just themselves, for their families, their children. What about the black men?
I think it's a couple of things, really. I think the society generally pushes down black men more so than black women. They don't really want to allow the black men to rise up. But also, I think, again, due to the psychological derangement from living here, black women seem to be valuing the black men a lot less. And it comes from, again, where you were saying that the black women feel they cannot trust their black men. I think that's really, really, really sad, because when you don't trust somebody, that somebody then doesn't owe you anything. They don't need to be there for you. You're kind of creating something within them as well, which it can be sort of reactionary towards your lack of trust. When they do something against they do something against us, really they're doing something against themselves. And in the same way that when women don't trust their black men, then they are also doing something against themselves, because they are cutting off a very important supportive sector of the society and of their family as well.
For you then, what are some of the things that you admire about black men?
Their creativity, number one. They're so creative and they have that really practical element about them. They're always building, constructing. They've always got ideas. Really, sometimes it seems like pie in the sky ideas, but I think we shouldn't cut down anybody's ideas, you know, no matter how pie in the sky they could be, because everything is possible. Their potential for support, being so supportive, but also, you know, they're just lovely. They're just, you know, they can be so loving, and they're just beautiful. You know, they have good spirits. Black men are beautiful.
What would you like to say to black men out there?
Breathe. Keep breathing. It's not easy. It isn't easy out here, but also recognise your sisters, your mothers, your aunties are here as well, and they may not be blood sisters, blood aunties, you know. You have to find those people who you can sit and really reason with. They are here to support you and to be supported by you in your endeavours and in our endeavours too. Meditate, understand yourself, and enjoy life. Be upful, be alive in the world. Really appreciate what life has to offer, because life is not just this Western world, you know, because black people live. And I will just say to black men, keep living, live.
You're listening to Ankhobia on New Style Radio 98.7.
There you have it. Black women talking about their views on black men. In the studio, I have Gillian Clark.
Greetings.
And I also have Kente.
Greetings.
Okay. Kente, let's start with you. You know, what did you think about what the women had to say?
Well, what the women were saying was very interesting, but it really reflects our situation as a people. And a sister made a strong statement about helping to put the black man back on track. Now I would say now that we all know the problems now what we have, and how we're going to put back the black family back on track, and that is the thing we face at this moment. Because we're upside down people, upside down economics, upside down politics, upside down education. So we have to expect our families to be upside down also. And how are we going to get back on track to what we are supposed to be? And that's the problem we're facing right now. The solution, what do we do to repair the damage that has been done to the African family?
And by African family, you mean black family, right?
Yeah, I mean black family, particularly those of us from the diaspora.
Yeah. Gillian, what was you hearing as you listened to those interviews? What was you picking up?
Yeah, I mean the emotions that I picked up, really, if I can just run through it quickly, was, because I listened to all the interviews, was anger, despair, a sense of hopelessness, emotional fatigue, disappointments, tiredness, bitterness, and emptiness.
Okay, now remember folks, Gillian is a professional counsellor.
I'm also a black woman.
And also a black woman as well. Yeah? So you're saying that there's a lot of despair going on, there's a lot of mixed
That's
emotions,
what I was picking
essentially.
Up. Yeah, I think there was a theme right across the interviews, right across the ages as well, because you interviewed some quite young women and some big people as well.
That's the part too.
Yeah, but the whole sense of, you know, those were the emotions that were coming through strong.
But as a black woman, do you share any of the sentiments with those, you know, with what the women expressed? Did you kind of agree with what they were saying, or?
I can't disagree, because it's their perception, it's their experience, so I'm never going to disabuse anybody of that. But I'm the kind of person that my glass is half full
rather than half empty.
And then half empty. I'm a half full kind of person. So if there's deficits, then, for want of a better term, I'm looking for how you can build up on that, rather than say, well, let me have nothing. You know, let me find something. You know what I mean? Everybody has something. Everybody has some positive quality. Everyone has something to contribute.
Yeah.
And I will always, you know, big up the black man. You know, I will always do that, because, you know, their glass is half full as well.
But can we ignore the behaviours of some of the men in our community? Can we actually, you know, continue to ignore what's happening. Some men not looking after their children. Some sisters feeling that they're disrespected, that they're not even wanted by black men. I picked up that a lot.
Yes,
they don't even feel wanted by black men. Can we continue to ignore the behaviour of some of the men in our community?
No, not at all, because that is colluding and that is making it acceptable. But what we have to do, and I say we as men and women, is we have to look at ourselves. You know, there are women that will put up with this because they want to be in a relationship. They feel that they need a relationship. They have to look within themselves and say, well, if this is what the relationship means and this is what it costs to me, am I willing to pay that price?
And it kind of begs the question as well, doesn't it? Are we as women, are we really being honest enough? Because I kind of think that you attract to you what you are.
Yes.
Yeah, you attract to you what you need to learn. That person comes to you to teach you and to mirror certain things to you. So I'm wondering if some of the sisters are being totally honest, or do they even think on that kind of level?
Well, they're probably not even aware.
Yeah.
You know, I think, the other theme is, I felt that there was some lack of self-responsibility.
Yeah.
And quite a bit of projection, especially where the anger and the bitterness was coming through.
Explain that to us.
Like projection, there's things that you have within yourself.
Yeah.
That, I will see you, I'm an angry person.
Yeah.
And you're an angry person.
Yeah.
But I don't recognise myself as an angry person.
Oh, okay.
But I'm attracted to you as an angry person.
Yeah.
And what attracts me initially to you is really what is going to really jack me off in the end, because I actually don't like that quality. But before I look at it myself, I'm going to diss you and say, well, Ankhobia, you're an angry person, I can't deal with you, when actually sometimes you're actually saying I can't deal with myself.
Interesting Kenty.
I would say that the sisters will be bitter because we are in bitter times, right? How can you be happy in a situation like this? The thing is, we've been deculturized, and as long as we remain deculturized, nothing is going to change. This thing will still perpetuate itself until we as a people stand up and take some serious action to the slide. It's going to take a big change of even the way we form relationship. Everything will have to be overhauled. And until we do that, it's going to go on and on and on and on.
But I think what's important to say as well is that we're going to have to take those steps as individuals as well as collectively, because oftentimes, you hear, oh, we must unite, black people must unite, and all that kind of talk, and then people get upset because things don't happen. And I think if people take individual responsibility to clean up shop, then I think that's the only way we're going to get some of the change.
As an example, where we came from, we have a situation where boys are trained women and girls are trained with women.
You mean when we come from the Caribbean?
Well, from Africa.
From Africa, alright.
And women are trained how to be a wife, and men are trained how to be a wife.
Husband.
How to be a husband. So these are the things that we've lost. And I personally, I might sound a bit down, but unless we go back to something like that, I can't see any change. Even the concept of marriage we have before is different than we have it now.
Yeah.
Originally, marriage was between two families. Right? There's more to getting married than falling in love. Because they say fall in love, you fall out of love. So everything that we're doing today is upside down.
But is that because we're using Western values? Western paradigm of viewing the world, of living our lives?
Yeah, obviously. Of course, we've been taken away from where we came from for the past so many 100 years now. So obviously we've lost those things we used to have before. And it's no good expecting us anything to change if we remain with the same mindset. Nothing will never change.
Did you as a man feel bitter towards any of those women who spoke? Did you feel angry?
No.
Heard?
No, I don't feel angry, because what the sisters are saying is their experience.
Yeah.
And I as a man know it is what I see also out there.
Yeah.
Among us black men.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think
say some, please.
Well, many of us. I couldn't say most of us.
Okay.
And in fact, I think the women were really kind, to be honest, because they could have said a lot worse than what they were saying.
Yeah.
Because when we were growing up as young men, nobody really taught us how to form relationship, how to look after, how to respect women. We were growing up seeing women as sex object, to tell the truth. Right? That's how we're brought up. So when you're brought up in that kind of environment, what do we expect? The idea was to see how many women you could basically deceive.
Yeah.
And then you can boast with your friends what you've been doing up to. That's the reality.
Yeah.
So in that environment, what do we expect?
Yeah.
It is the way it is now. I mean, what else can we expect? Unless those mindsets are changed, nothing is going to change.
Yeah. Gillian, do you know
interesting.
do you know any black men, you know, in terms of what's the kind of men that the women were talking about and describing? Do you know any of those black men? Do you have any kind of friends who are like that?
No.
In your, why not?
No, because
you don't know a black man who stands outside the bookie and
I don't know
who doesn't
any.
look after his children?
No, sir.
Who doesn't beat a woman?
Oh God, no. No. And I came from a family of my mum and my dad. My dad would never put his hand on, you know what I mean? Very, very strong family, you know, Christian values and what have you. And my brothers, what? No, man, that, you know, strong black women, powerful women that they're with, you know what I mean? They wouldn't tolerate. And I don't know, I said earlier, I do not know, honestly, hand on heart, I do not know any black man like that.
Yeah.
I really don't, and I think it's the environment I'm in, it's what I'm projecting out, it's what my family's projecting out, and it's what my friends are projecting out. So those kind of men wouldn't be interested in my group of people. I know powerful, professional, responsible, family-oriented black men.
Yeah.
Amen. I mean, enough of them.
Praise the Lord. Kente.
Well, those men do exist.
Yes.
And even if you don't know them personally, you hear the stories of those men, and even women come to you sometime and complain about those men. So even though we might not know them personally, they're really out there in a large number.
Gillian, what kind of advice would you give to some of the women who were being interviewed, but also black women in general? Because I've interviewed over 26 women, and I find their views quite common throughout a lot of the women, particularly the older women. The younger girls are something else. We're going to deal with that next week. What advice would you give to the sisters out there?
I think, first of all, I would say, remember, we have choice. Right? A lot of people disempower themselves by feeling they have no choice, they have to accept, they have to stay. No, you choose to stay. You know, you choose to accept, and it is difficult to make that change. You know, I mean, if you know other sisters who are in, you know, better places and better spaces, maybe, you know, to share with them, you know, to help them, to support you and empower you. But you have to look at yourself, and I think you have to give yourself permission to make the change and to make the move and to say enough is enough, and I am worth, you know, what am I worth?
And would you advise that some couples take up counselling?
Oh well, yeah, absolutely. And I work with individuals in relationships. I will work with the man, I will work with the woman, I will work with them then as a couple. And I'm equally as challenging to the man as to the woman, you know. And sometimes, you know, the relationship is saved, and sometimes they both decide that, you know, okay, enough's enough, and respect and walk away, you know.
And it takes a lot of strength to be able to walk away, doesn't it? Otherwise it creates a lot of bitterness. Did you pick up on any bitterness?
Well, like I said, yeah, very sadly so.
Yeah,
very sadly so. But these women have, you know, they're feeling it.
Yeah,
you know, you could feel it. They were talking from their heart. They were talking from their own experiences. They were talking from their mothers' experiences as well. You know, a lot of these women have seen their mothers, you know, they've been brought up in a lone family situation, and they've probably seen their mother struggle. They've probably seen their dad down at the bookie or whatever, you know what I mean, not bringing money into the family. So that they are feeling it.
Yeah, most certainly. Do you agree with what some of the women were saying, that it's the black woman who's going to have to lead the way, who's going to have to set the ball rolling to get things changed?
Yes, that's very difficult.
Interesting. That's interesting.
They call it chicken and egg.
Yeah, I think somebody has to take a stand. I think whether it's a man or a woman,
or the both.
You yourself, don't say man or woman, don't genderize it. You have to do first and me will follow. Oh, of course I'm going to have to do it first and I'm going to be really bitter. You take that personal responsibility and say, I will. Not man or woman. I will, because I know Gillian, will do that.
Yeah.
One of the things we can do from now, if we can, is to prepare the next generation.
Definitely.
Maybe most of us are past that stage where maybe we can change, maybe. But if we can start now from training the next generation, well, that's the only solution. And maybe in a time from now, things will change. But I don't know what... we hear sisters crying out. And they just can't find a certain man.
You were here with the men's interviews. You heard what the men had to say about black women in Britain. And now you've heard the first part of what the sisters have to say. How do you feel?
Well, like I'm saying, what I've heard of, that's what I'm expecting to hear. Knowing the situation out there. As I said, I think the sisters are really... I think they hurt more because you see the sisters genuinely want to be part of a strong relationship.
Yeah.
And they're hurt in the fact that they can't find the right person to form that relationship with. The men have a different kind of anger. These sisters, you can see, is something that burning from deep within.
Yeah.
Reasoning empowerment for the community with Ankhobia on 98.7 New Style Radio.
Next interview we have coming up is from a sister I spoke to. She's based in London. It's a telephone interview, alright, so watch the quality just a little bit. It's not the best, but listen with a very open mind to what she has to say. I gave all of the interviews to two psychotherapists. They chose the sister I'm going to play next, who they felt kind of really summed up what was happening in our community for them. And they also mentioned Brother Bandelli, and they also chose him as well as being those two voices. Before I do that, let me introduce my guests once again. In the studio we have Kente.
Evening.
Okay, Kente is no stranger, as you know, to the On a Level talk show. And we have Monique Harris, her first time on the show.
Hello there.
Tell us what you think.
Hi, my name is Alison.
You know, I've been going around asking women, how do they view black men in today's society?
Yeah.
So I would like to now ask you that same question. How do you view black men in Britain?
Well, firstly, I'm going to have to say that the idea of black men, I think it's a much more diverse group than the media and even the black community allows black men to be.
Yeah.
So even though we're kind of talking about black men as a particular group of people, I think within that group we must acknowledge the differences, the different abilities, different perspectives and different outlooks, rather than kind of trying to put everyone into one basket and not kind of giving them the credence they deserve.
Okay.
My kind of perception of black men, it's kind of it's good and bad. It's good and bad in terms of how black men interact with black women. I think there's so much kind of history, so much negative history that goes into the kind of current relationships between black men and black women. And I think there's lots to kind of overcome in terms of how we stigmatize ourselves, the negative self-perceptions we have of each other, manifest in many different ways. I also think that's one of the main reasons why in Britain you have, is it 50% or more than 50% of black men who are in interracial relationships. I've been in interracial relationships myself, and I certainly think that a person has the right to choose, but I think what makes the difference or the distinction is why you're in those relationships. Why do you choose someone who isn't black? And often I think the reasons, if people choose to be honest themselves and go deeper, the reasons are kind of very negative in terms of how stereotypical ideas of what blackness is, and really negative perceptions of what it is to be black, what you can and can't do, what you can and can't achieve.
So for you as a black woman, you said you've been in an interracial relationship. Did black men, their attitudes, their behaviours, did that affect your choice of partner in any way?
No, I mean I've dated lots of black men, and in fact I've dated mainly black men, to be fair. So I wouldn't say that has kind of negatively affected my perception of black men being in relationships with black men. I think my main concerns are kind of the perception in the public, the wider public, and how black men, especially younger black men, seem to be very happy to subscribe to this idea that they're kind of thugs, they're gangsters, they're hoodlums, they're up to no good, because it's, you know, it's cool.
Okay.
And it's good to kind of, you know, to be down and to be fashionable. And I think there's a certain, you can kind of understand if a group of people feel isolated, why they kind of look for families kind of outside of normal family setups in terms of gangs and so on. But I think the way that it's kind of been perpetuated, the negativity that comes with that, because there isn't enough positive to balance it, and for it to, there isn't enough to kind of give the sense or communicate the sense that young black men can achieve kind of beyond those limitations of being you know, a hoodlum, of being a gangster. I think especially, as I said before, for young black men, I think they are suffering from a very single-minded perception of themselves that comes from the media, but also from within the black community as well. I think those ideas of being kind of a gangster, or whatever you want to call it, aren't challenged enough. And basically, in terms of representation, there isn't enough diversity. So I think, fine, you can kind of say that you feel marginalized, you feel that you've been kind of, you know, you're biased towards you because of your race and your gender. That's all very well, but then black women have those issues as well, and I personally think that black women have made more of an effort to kind of come out of that, to counter that, and it's not simply because they're females and it's easier for them. In fact, I would say it's probably the opposite. So I think it's been almost kind of too easy. Black men have tried to reduce their situation, or a certain type of black men, because again, I don't want to kind of get into that role of stereotyping all young black men as being the same. There are certain types of young black men who get into the mindset whereby they begin to blame everyone else for their problems. And so anything that's happening to them that isn't good is society's fault, it's the black woman's fault, it's always someone else's fault. And I think if you want to kind of make any real long-term change, you have to look within, because no one else has that answer really but you.
So you don't think that there is any preferential treatment being shown towards black women when getting jobs and applying for, you know, various jobs within the system?
I don't think black men are deliberately being held back from achieving their potential. I've been in many situations where I faced discrimination, and obviously I'm a black female. I think it's part of the experience of living in this country as a minority. So I think you can't kind of always use that as an excuse. You know, I'm black, they're discriminating against me, therefore I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do, you know, anything else. You have to kind of try and kind of work within the system, and in many ways try and make your own opportunities. And rather than letting someone else's problem become yours and consume your creativity and what you can achieve, I think you have to kind of be much more single-minded about what you want to achieve and how you can do it. And I really do think that black men can go out there and achieve goals they set for themselves. And I'm not just talking within the context of what we're used to seeing them in terms of music and in terms of sport, but kind of in the wider context within the wider community. You know, and I've seen it myself. I've seen I've seen some black men go on to achieve what they set out for themselves because they had a particular vision, because they were tenacious. And I think it takes all of those qualities. And to be fair, whether you're black, white, or whatever you are, not everyone has those qualities to succeed. So it isn't always about being black.
Can you understand the frustration that black men feel with this system as it is presently?
I think firstly they'd have to tell me what they think is wrong with the system, and from what I'm hearing, what they seem to feel is wrong is the fact that they're being discriminated against because of their race, and possibly also because of their gender, because they're young black men. I can understand certain frustrations because being discriminated against is certainly no fun. It can be a very demeaning, undermining experience. But as I stated earlier, I think even though that is the case in many situations, I think you still have to kind of look for ways to kind of improve yourself. And I think in terms of them feeling that way, I think it's kind of a problem not just of young black men, but of the kind of the wider culture. We live in a culture where it's kind of become more and more easy to kind of blame other people for what we think goes wrong in our own lives. It's kind of literally almost like a culture of blame. If something happens to me, it's got to be someone else's fault. The fault always lies somewhere else. And I think so we're kind of existing as a default in some ways anyway, because we are black, and then to kind of have the impact of what's going on now in the wider culture, where it becomes acceptable to kind of be blaming other people. I think, it's a double disadvantage. So I think we have to be very cautious of taking that route, because I think it is the easier route. I'm not saying when you find discrimination and when you find injustice that you shouldn't do something to kind of, to tackle it. I think you should try and address it in the best way possible, so certain issues and certain experiences aren't left kind of unresolved, because I think then within you're left with a bad taste. You have to put things in context, but I think when you do experience that type of racism, then it's down to you, the individual, to kind of to try and address it, and then kind of in your own way move on to find a solution within the wider community.
You're listening to Ankhobia on New Style Radio 98.7.
Because I do think that there are systems in place that can support young black people, young black men, young black women. I really do believe that. And if I didn't believe it, then everything I've done in the past in terms of my training would have been pointless. So what I believe is achievable for me, I believe is achievable for other people, other young black people, men and women.
But surely, don't you somehow see a connection with the historical experiences of black people in the diaspora, and with our levels of achievement and trying to make it? Don't you see that there's some kind of correlation in our relationships, the dysfunctional families, just the whole setup of our communities, and that this therefore makes it difficult for some of us to actually make it in this system?
I think there's certainly a point. I kind of, again, I do think I've made that point earlier when I kind of mentioned, when I say that I've experienced racism myself. But I think if you're hoping to separate yourself and fight the system from without, then you're making a very big mistake. You have to be within and achieve a certain level where you can actually effect some kind of change. And it is about effecting change. I think black people are very good at kind of talking about how they're going to do things, but when it comes down to action, unfortunately, that's where we're seriously lacking. I think if we were able to kind of match our actions with our words, we would, as a whole, be more advanced in terms of various businesses and so on. So I think, yes, there's been a correlation that can't be denied. I think a lot of people do try to deny it and say there is no relationship between kind of what went before in terms of our experiences and what happens now. I completely disagree. I think there is a correlation, but I think now it's up to us how we address that. I think to do it, you have to kind of be within the system and not without.
Some black men I've spoken to feel that, they don't want to be part of this system. As far as they're concerned, the system is evil. It's a system of injustice. They've had their history, their legacies stolen from them, their ancestral knowledge taken from them. So why should they participate in a system that has brutally murdered millions of African men and women and prospered from that?
Well, my response to that is, if you don't want to participate within the system, how do you intend to participate in life? How do you intend to participate in the UK? And yes, black people have had a very negative experience. There's no two ways about that. And you can kind of travel to many countries, be it South America or countries in Europe that have large black populations, and see how they suffer, even more so than many of us do in the UK. And that's also been my experience, having travelled quite a bit actually. In the UK, there certainly tends to be more opportunities than there are in many other countries for black people. So I think, yes, again, that is a factor. Sorry, can you repeat that last bit of the question?
They kind of feel like they don't want to have anything to do with a system that has exploited them, murdered them, and abused them.
Again, I can certainly understand, where they're coming from. But as I kind of have stipulated from the very beginning, I think you have to acknowledge that you are within the system. You were born in the UK, and if you don't believe it, then you're part of the system. Then what alternatives do you have for kind of, etching out an existence or a life for yourself and your community? What are the alternatives? And this is what I mean when I say that, if black people's words were met by actions, then we would have less of a problem. So I think it's all very well to say, I don't want to be part of the system is against me, it's corrupt, it's evil, that's fine. But if that's what you think, what are you doing to counter it? And I'm not hearing enough of that. And at the end of the day, many different kinds of peoples have been persecuted.
Yeah.
And that's a fact of history. That's simply a fact of human history. Many peoples have been, different types of peoples, other than black people, have been persecuted, found themselves in strange foreign lands. But, you have to survive. You have to kind of deal with the change. And I think we have to kind of deal with ourselves. And we don't do that very well. Unfortunately, as a people, we don't deal with our history. Therefore, we can't really deal with our current situations. And that has to kind of come from within us. We have to kind of want to do that. We have to want to gravitate towards that. And I think it frightens many black people. So even though you hear lots of black people talking about black this and black that, and so on, when it comes down to it, the prospect, the idea of seriously engaging in our history is too terrifying. It's terrifying. I know sometimes it scares me, just kind of to look back and think what was and kind of what the consequences are now and how we live today because of what happened to us in the past.
Yeah, I understand. Do you somehow feel that, you've travelled quite extensively, as you said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that there's a difference between, for example, black men you've met in Europe, black men you've met in the Americas, and the black men you're getting, the kind of black man that we're producing in Britain today? Is there a big difference, a big contrast between these groups of black men?
Well, I lived in New York for a year.
Yeah.
A few years back, I was there for a year. And I think, again, you do kind of get that. You will go to areas of New York where you really know what a ghetto is. I mean, people talk, which one of the things I kind of find quite funny, people talk about ghettos in this country. You've not seen a ghetto until you've actually been to America. That's a ghetto. There are no real kind of, state benefits that you get over here. If you basically, for most people, if you don't work, you don't live. So it's a completely different situation. So you do have areas in the US that really are deprived, culturally, socially, economically, psychologically deprived in a way that shocked me. Even though I'd expected to see poverty, I think the scale that I saw it on did surprise me in America. But that said, I remember kind of going to many different types of conventions organized by black people where you did see entrepreneurial young black men doing their thing. So again, you have total opposites. You have those who are subjugated and those who have made opportunities, even though they may have come from very subjugated or impoverished backgrounds. So, and I think, as I said earlier, I have met young black men in the UK who also have those qualities. There are just many more with those qualities who've chosen not to act upon them. So I think, again, that those factors play an issue, but then, the issue of choice is still so important. I think over here, what I find quite strange is that some young black men don't make enough of the opportunities that are presented to them. I mean, I know many talented young black men who are always intending to do something. It's always going to be tomorrow or next week or next month, and it never quite materializes. But they go out and they do their thing, and perhaps they're not taking it as seriously as they should do. So when they find themselves, or some of them find themselves in certain situations where they feel discriminated against, where they feel they haven't been given access to equal opportunities, then okay, that's fine. But then again, you have to look to yourself. I think rather than taking the easy route out, and I really do believe, and maybe some people will be offended by this, but that's okay. I really do believe that there are too many young black men who take the easy route out. The fact that in this country, where you have access to education that is for the most part free compared to many countries in the world, yet you have statistically more young black men in prisons than you do in college. That is a devastating statistic.
Yes.
And when I hear something like that, then it really kind of hits home, and that hurts. That does hurt me. That the idea that we go into a justice system that is probably biased, not probably, that is biased against black people, and the fact that a black person is more likely to go to jail than a white person for a similar crime cannot be underestimated. But even so, the element of choice. People don't necessarily put a gun in your hand and make you go and do certain things. They don't necessarily put drugs in your your pockets and so on. You have a choice about how you act, and I always kind of believe that kind of the idea of self-will and how you do and don't use it is so important. And so that's why I think you have to be very, very careful about continually using excuses or continually using other people as an excuse for what you haven't achieved. When you know in your heart of hearts, you haven't been trying as hard as you could have. You haven't been exploring or exploiting the opportunities that are out there because your belief is that the system is against you. When really, I mean, okay, in some ways the system might be against you, but the problem is, I think the bigger problem is that you're against yourself, and it's on such a subconscious level that you don't even know it.
That's a very strong statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's something to consider indeed. When you say young black men, what kind of age groups are you talking about?
Usually kind of like 16 to like 30, and that's kind of considered young.
Okay.
But I would kind of go even younger than that, because I think the problem with young black men starts at a much younger age. I think around 7 or 8, they kind of do pretty well in school, and then there's this change in what they achieve and how they are in terms of the way they learn and the results they get in school. So, and I think, as I said earlier, I have met young black men in the UK who also have those qualities. There are just many more with those qualities who've chosen not to act upon them. So I don't know that I could kind of say outside of the UK there are more young black men who have greater or better business minds. I couldn't necessarily say that because it wouldn't be completely accurate. What I can say is that within the UK there are many young black men who are not exploring, exploiting opportunities, utilizing the system, that's the crucial word for me, the system to achieve their ends. And I think another possible issue is that I actually believe that many young black men don't actually know what they want to do, and because of that it's easier to say the system is against me. But if you know what you want to do, if you truly know what you want to do, then the biggest obstacle to that surely has to be yourself. Some people will kind of think, oh yeah, you make it sound easy, and the point is that the intention is not to make it sound easy, but for people to understand that it's achievable. It is achievable. You can kind of work within the system and get certain results, and that's not to say it will be some kind of fairy tale ride where you'll never ever encounter discrimination, where you'll never encounter racism. That isn't the point. And I think it's also worth remembering that what doesn't kill you, and I truly believe this, makes you stronger. So I think you should be kind of looking into certain situations that you consider problems, trying to tackle them head on, and then seeing how you can utilize that disadvantage to your own advantage and improve yourself and achieve what it is you set out to achieve. So I think again it kind of comes back to expectation. What is expected of you as a young black man? And I think unfortunately not very much, and I think that is a fact of this society. But again, I think you have to kind of, what do they say, feel the fear and do it anyway. If you kind of just live constantly with fear or in someone else's shadow, then you're never going to achieve what you can do. You have to kind of believe bigger, bolder and brighter than anyone else can kind of believe for you. You have to dream bigger than anyone else's perception of yourself. Other people will place limitation because they've placed a limitation on me. That's their perception. I'm not placing limitations on myself, and that's the difference. It's a crucial difference.
Do you somehow feel that black men in this society, that they make good fathers, they make good community leaders, that they're good at committing or even want to commit with women? I'm
so glad you brought the issue of commitment up. I think it's a huge issue within the black community, and certainly with black men, and not just young black men, but I would say, and I'm going to use the term in general this time, even though I don't like the idea of generalizations, I just think there are so many, or in fact too many black men who I've seen who have gone and fathered child after child with different women, and even if it's sometimes being with several kids with one particular spouse, who haven't committed to that particular person. So I think in terms of fear, there's certainly a fear and phobia of commitment, just the idea of commitment. And if you can't commit to something as fundamental as your own child, then the idea that you can actually then commit to achieving what you want to, in terms of businesses or whatever it is you want to achieve for yourself, then that's unlikely to me. I think to be a committed person, you have to be a truly committed person. You have to commit to you. You would certainly commit to your children. You would certainly commit to the spouse if there was the hope of a long-term relationship. Or even if there weren't, then there's really no excuse for not committing to your children. So if you don't have that as a foundation, the idea of going on to try and achieve something in terms of your professional life is, it's always going to be a big task. It's going to be a big task and a big ask to try and do that, because it's simply not part of your setup. It's not part of your criteria. And I think it also goes back to the idea of blaming others, of not being responsible for yourself. I think those two things go hand in hand.
Do you somehow feel that we, as black women in this society, we contribute to the behaviour of certain black men or some black men, that we somehow don't encourage them? We somehow, as some black men I've spoken to say, we talk harshly to them, we put them down, we're very negative, we don't even value them. Do you think we have some responsibility, some blame should be landed on our lap as women?
I think some black women do, no question about that. Some black women do, but not all black women again. I think it's a self-perpetuating philosophy, isn't it? Kind of, going back to the whole idea of our history and the negativity that was, learned generation after generation after generation. So it's become an intrinsic part of who you are, that to be black is not to be good enough. And so I always think if a person never feels they're good enough, the idea that they can achieve is kind of beyond their realms, because it's outside of their scope of thinking, outside of what's familiar to them. So I think, yes, young black women or black women have certainly contributed to that issue, but I think there are also black women who challenge that. And I tend to find that even though, certainly kind of in the context of Caribbean culture, it tends to be quite matriarchal.
Yeah.
So you tend to have a lot of black men who are used to dealing with strong women. But I think, unfortunately, the idea is, I think it is an idea that black men are used to dealing with strong women. I think that's almost a kind of fallacy, because once you're confronted by a strong woman who knows what she wants, who's able to kind of be with you and kind of inspire, you to kind of get to the next stage, together, even, you can't quite handle that. I've certainly been in situations, and this is talking in some respects from my own personal experience, but also from other experiences of other black women that I know, that when they've been with the guy and they've kind of embarked on what they want to do in terms of their career and so on, once they kind of perhaps pushed it too far, where the man began to feel challenged, then that kind of support system that kind of said at the beginning they could deal with a strong black woman wasn't really the case, that it all kind of fell apart. So whilst I do think black women have contributed to the situation with young black men, I think there are many other factors. It's not just because black women have been negative, or because their words have been harsh, or because they haven't always been supportive. And if that's the case, I think you often kind of get what you settle for. I think, unfortunately, there are too many black men and black women who settle for less. And that's with regards to relationships and also in terms of work.
No topic is out of bounds. If it's real to you, it's uncensored to us. The Honor Level Talk Show. It's real.
You use the word young black men, but what about older black men? Black men in their late 30s, 40s, early 50s. What about these groups of black men who are fathers to the young black men that you were talking about?
Well, I think when I'm talking about lack of commitment, I think this is what kind of comes into play. And certainly men of that age group, 30s, 40s and older, many of the men who have left women to be single parents, who've had minimal or no involvement in the lives of their children. And I think it's quite a natural thing to think and expect as well, that you have some involvement in your child's life. I think young boys need male father figures. They need father figures. They need someone who gives them some sense of what it is to be a young black man as they grow and they develop, and they develop their desires and their kind of wishes and what they may want to do with their lives. And I think all of that is so I think it's so important, and I just think it's again kind of going back to the issue of fear and commitment phobia, this inability to kind of develop that connection, with a child, not even a child, but with your child, is just is something that it tears at the heartstrings of the black community. It really does tear at the heartstrings of the black community, because I don't really think that in any other, and I could be wrong, but I don't think I am, that in any other social, ethnic, racial group, that there are as many young single mothers as there are within the black community, and that's really a sad statistic. And yes, it is probably in fact it is a result of our history of being enslaved and of being sold on and treated as cattle. That is a fact of it, but now we have to accept some responsibility for how we kind of treat each other, for how we treat our children, and to actually kind of deal with the history and move beyond it. It's about moving beyond it now, not staying stuck in the past and always looking for excuses as to why you've chosen not to look after your child. And when I say that, I mean I know there are certain black men in situations who would love to be able to to be responsible for their children and to provide a solid paternal role model, but that's been denied to them through women who, for whatever reason, have chosen. For some women who've chosen to be vindictive and not allow their children to have access to their dads, and I think that is certainly unacceptable and certainly wrong when it's just done on the basis that it's vindictive, and that's the only reason.
How do you think, we're coming up to the last two questions now, it's been great speaking with you, and it's been very insightful.
Yeah, it's insightful,
I must say.
Insightful for me as well. As I kind of speak, it's all kind of coming out now. So it's things I wasn't fully conscious of in terms of what I actually kind of do feel and think about the situation. But yeah, it's been good.
Okay. What does the future hold, Alison, for black men in Britain?
I think the future holds what black men in Britain want it to. I do. Again, it goes back to responsibility and the idea of self-determination. I think it's positive. I think we're kind of going through a stage now of, I don't know that I would necessarily call it crisis, although I'm sure some would, but a stage of uncertainty of who we are within this community. I think we're still searching for that identity, that kind of comfort zone. And I think maybe once that's been achieved, maybe once a balance has been achieved, we can then kind of move on to really do things. So I think the future is for young black people, for young black men in the society, what they choose it to be. And it is, again, going back to the idea of choice. It is about what you choose to do with your life, with the opportunities and that are given to you, regardless in many ways of the circumstances that you find yourself in. And I think if we choose to kind of acknowledge that we are within a society, within a system, whatever you think about that system, you have a far greater chance of achieving what you want for yourself within it than you do from without. And I think you simply have to make a choice about how you're going to do that. So I think once they choose to pursue their own endeavours in a kind of a conscious, creative way, then I think then nothing can really hold them back, and they can achieve. Because black women are doing it, and they're experiencing many of the same obstacles, although they're not all the same, many of them are. So it can be done. It can be done. So I think we have to kind of be optimistic as a community, as black people. We have to believe that we can really get out there and achieve, and that we have something to offer, and that whole ethic of hard work that our parents brought to this country, because they really worked so hard. And it's one of the things that kind of I always find hurtful, the idea of black people as lazy, because if black people have a history of anything, it's not of being lazy.
Yeah.
So that's what I feel. Yeah.
Do you feel, as a black woman living in this society, having grown up in this society, do you feel appreciated by black men?
Appreciated by black men.
Do you feel that black women as a group are appreciated and loved by black men and respected?
I think they're becoming better understood, more understood by black men. Loved, I think that's still somewhere in the future in terms of us as a whole. I think that the idea of us loving each other is is a huge issue, let alone us kind of actually loving ourselves, which is what it's all about and what it all kind of comes down to in the end.
Yeah.
I think there is a kind of respect. I think there's a certain kind of cautiousness, I think, between black men and black women. The idea that kind of, you know, one is out to get the other. That mentality, I think, is still there. So I think once we, again, kind of engage with these ideas of what it is to be a black man and also what it is to be a black woman, because the two things kind of in many ways go hand in hand. I'm a black woman, I was made by a black man and a black woman, so I am a black woman, and therefore I kind of think or believe within myself I have both of those characteristics, whether that sounds strange to people or not. So I have part of the male and part of the female within me, even though I am female. So I think in that respect, and I think the love is kind of there somewhere, but I think there's lots of cautiousness, lots of mistrust on both parts. So it's not something that's kind of unachievable, but it may not be tomorrow. Again, in terms of how, you know, black men will achieve future success, how they will improve themselves. It's a similar thing to how the relationship between black men and black women has to improve. We have to engage with those issues, the issues that we are afraid of engaging with, and then we can get real results in terms of, you know, professional achievements, but also in terms of personal, because I think you really do need a solid personal foundation to go on and then do well professionally.
So lastly, last question, if black men are to move on and ahead in this society, what do you think they need to begin to understand about black women if we are to accompany them on that journey?
That we're not their enemy. I think that has to be understood, that we are not the enemy. We're not kind of, you know, part of the system trying to bring them down and trying to kind of undermine them and trying to outdo them in terms of work and so on. That's what has to be understood, and I think once they acknowledge that, once they deal with it, once they address it, then yes, we can move on. Because at some point, the bitterness that exists between us or between some of us, because, you know, again, it's unfair to generalize and say it's all black men and all black women who are at battle, but, you know, some of us are. And so we have to just, again, engage with the issues that are holding us back so that we can move forward, and that is down to the individual, it's down to the community, and it's down to our own choices.
Okay, Alison, it's been great talking to you.
Thank you. I've enjoyed every minute, honestly. Thank you.
Yeah, I have indeed. I've learned quite a lot, actually, and I thank you. I thank you for taking the time to share with us.
Yep.
I'm sure there are many people who can learn from what you've said. So thank you.
You're welcome. I hope it's been of some value to your listeners, and, you know, it's a great show, great forum.
Thank you.
Ankhobia with On a Level on New Style Radio 98.7 FM.
Welcome back to New Style Radio, and the phone lines have started already. But of course, I have guests in the studio. Kenton, let me start with you. What do you make of what Alison had to say?
Well, of course, the sister had a lot of interesting things to say, especially in terms of young black men within the system, and how the position of black men within the system do affect the relationship with black women, and that's very important. But the sister is saying that we do have a choice. Even though the system is hostile towards us, it is still within our power to better ourselves within that system. And it reaches a point where we can't use history and the hostility of the system as excuse for actions as men anymore. And the sister stressed that point very clearly.
Okay, Monique, what was your take on what you've heard so far? What's your take on things so far? We've only got 10 minutes left.
The woman's absolutely brilliant, I must admit. She obviously observed everything more deeply than most of us, because obviously some of we are kind of reactionists. We get very mad and we just shoot out everything out of our mouth without actually relaxing. For me, all I can say about it, I hope there's negative ends sooner than later.
You hope there's negative?
The negativeness about the black male ends sooner than later.
So, you hope it ends?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, okay, you hope
negativeness.
It ends sooner than later.
Yes.
Now remember, we do have to look at issues. Some people say we've been discussing these things for years. Believe me, some people don't know the issue. Some people never analyse the issue inside out. They only know things on a surface. They don't have a clue when you begin to take them deeper and deeper and deeper into some of these things that are happening. All right, so you do have to look at the problems that are before us. Okay, a text message. Hi, very good reasoning, internal affairs. As always, strong points of view. Someone must mention that we are known as survivors. Monique and Kenta, you both got your hands up.
I know it's a bit late in the day now, but it would be nice to have heard a young man about his true feelings without asking his name, about how he feels, what's happening to him. That's what I have to say.
I'm going to send a text messaging. She says, regardless of what we say, culture is the remedy, and let's not forget women set the standard for culture.
That's correct.
Okay.
But I would just also say that the problem is that when we're speaking about economics, strong families are the backbone of strong economy. Without a strong family, there can be no strong economy, because families build economies. And if black men and black women are not farming sustain families, then there can be no hope.
Also, one of the things that was said on the last interview was that we often come together as men and women with a lot of negative perceptions. Okay, so I think if there's one thing this show has done over the last 4 weeks actually, is reveal what those negative perceptions are, for us to see that often we walk around with hidden assumptions about you as a black man, me as a black woman, and we have to put them on the table and be very, very clear about what we are dealing with.
Well, that is true. I do have negative thoughts or views of black men, like we all do. But sometimes I do see the positiveness about some of them. But sometimes for me it tarnishes by the majority who's too negative for my liking. I have to cut them dead and move on.
Okay.
I rather have positivity. I thrive on positivity, and if I can get that from even the very small black men, yes, keep going for it.
Okay, that's a strong word, majority.
Yes,
a vast majority black men. Really, you think so?
Yes.
But black women are angels, are we?
Not at all. There's good and bad in all of us. Yes.
Okay, the black woman is a goddess, right?
You're damn right.
Kente.
Like I've been saying, we've all got problems.
Yes.
And what lies at the root of our problem is that we've lost the culture that produce family.
But what Sister Amina is saying in that text is that women have to set the culture. But I'm wondering, Professor Obati Shaka has this view about the two, that in Africa it was the man and the woman. I know some people do say it was just the women who set the culture. But if we're talking about rebuilding and recreating a culture, it's going to take both of us. Surely.
Until the day when our young women, I use young women for this point, when they reach a certain age, 16, 17, until we have the concept of finding a husband and not a boyfriend.
Yes.
And finding a wife.
You can tell he's a daddy, isn't he, the way he says that?
Well, I'm no different. I'm not saying I'm any different, because we've all been through the same thing.
Yes.
And until young men reach maturity and look for a wife and not a girlfriend, until we pass that stage, then there's going to be problems. We came from a culture with that outlook.
Yes. Okay, somebody called up. They didn't want to give their name, but they had some solutions. We had a very nice conversation actually with this sister while the interview was being played.
Right.
She didn't want to give her name, cool, but she says we need history courses for self-knowledge. I did explain to her that there are those history courses in the community. If you miss out, then it's a shame. Okay, she says we need more family days in the community. Okay, I was wondering if she meant, like, you know, when you have Mother's Day, maybe we need like a family day. We need to create black schools. She says to the older sisters, know the psychology of your man. Know the psychology of your man. I like that. And she says, work with your man. If he's got potential, work with him. Do not give up on the brothers. Work with your man if he has no potential. Okay, come on to the last few minutes of the show. Let me hand it over to my guys.
Sometimes you get tired of holding a man's hand, you know.
Does that mean that all the sisters have potential?
You tell me. You went to Africa to get your wife.
No.
You went all the way to Africa. So people doing something wrong.
No, I lived in Africa.
Yes.
So my wife is from Africa.
Okay.
Had I lived in Barbados, my wife would be from Barbados.
Okay, she'd be a Bajan. Okay, Moni.
For me, I would love my black brothers if they would love me as a woman and respect me and encourage me and have pride in me.
Okay. Go ahead, sis.
Well, Kente, after hearing all these grievances from the women, do you feel this cycle at the moment is quite small? Will it get bigger, despite giving us some form of advice about how we should be treated? The cycle may end up keep going on.
Yes, it's going to go on and on. You see, if something is broken, unless you fix it, it's not going to get mended. So if you leave it unfixed, then it's going to go on and on and on. And unless we arrest the situation at this moment, we'll be back here in 20 years' time talking the same thing. Because these children, these young children, they're the ones who are producing children. And if they have got this attitude, what would their children be like? These same young men whose sisters are bitter against, these are the fathers of today and even tomorrow. So what type of children will they produce? And it's going to be a vicious cycle. Unless we today take serious steps to halt this slide, then it's going to go on and on. You see, things don't change by magic. Magic don't change things.
Takes effort.
You see, Marcus Garvey said, chance don't satisfy the aspiration of a suffering people. It's work, self-reliance. So unless we take action, nothing is going to change. And we could have seen this 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Because everything that's taking place now, the foundation was set for that decades ago. And you could see it. The present situation we have now with our youth out of control, or young men, that's a thing that could have been seen 20 years ago.
In fact, many of our great scholars predicted that this would happen.
Because the way we were raising the children, and bearing in mind it's also a hostile environment, it was obvious what was going to happen. And as far as I can see, nothing was done to prevent the slide that is taking place today. So there's no way it's going to stop unless we make it stop.
Okay, how do we stop the slide? How do we make things change? All right, you've heard what Brother Kente's had to say. Things have to change. You know, one thing to have a discussion, but you know, we try to have these discussions to prompt action in our community. Share with us what you think are some of the things that we can do, whether it's individuals, as families, whether it's about institution building, a change in our culture and recreating a new culture. Tell us what you think.